Hi and welcome to the video, and in this video what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing stage by stage how I put radio control into the Mitsubishi Shogun. I've already done this with the Jeep JK, and with the Jeep what I did was I used the third channel to control the lights. With this one what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting in the sound unit. The reason why I'm making a film of this is because I actually found it quite fiddly to do, and there was a lot of trial and error, and what I've done for the purposes of this video is I've taken everything out so that I can reinstall it, and it will kind of look as if everything just goes in first time, but that was far from the case in reality. So just to go through the bits and pieces which I'm going to be putting in, starting with the radio control, I'm going to be using a Spectrum receiver, which is one of these fairly small affairs, and the DX4S transmitter, the Patrol sound unit from Orlandoo, and that comes with this little box of tricks there. There'll be a wire for connecting it up, and obviously not forgetting the speed controller. Okay, without further ado, let's get going. Taking the body off the truck, and you'll see that I've already got the motor fitted, and this is the 150 RPM motor, and we've already got the servo in here, which is the official Orlandoo 2.2 gram servo, and those have all been fitted. And what you'll probably notice is that I've got a piece of lead here on top of the servo. That makes the truck much better at climbing up inclines and crawling off road. Right, so starting with the speaker, because everything in here is quite tight to fit together, and I use this double-sided tape which I think I highlighted in the previous video to stick everything down with. If you want things to stick nicely, what you have to do is you have to make sure that both surfaces are perfectly clean, and I use the isopropanol alcohol just to make sure that there's no grease on any of the surfaces. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stick down the speaker. Having previously done this, I know where I can put the speaker, and I'll just explain it in a moment. So the first thing I want is the tape, and I'm going to want to put that on this back plate here, basically the full length. So that's going to go there, and chop it off. The front of the plate is slightly angled, so I'll just chop off the excess pieces there. One. Two. Right, so that's all ready to accept the speaker. Now, having tried this and made sure that it fits inside the truck, if you line up and you'll see a kind of a ridge here in the plastic with the very back of the plate there, it will exactly fit inside the truck without fouling on the rear window. So let's get this tape off. that's going to want to go there like that. Now I've left tape on the front because slightly later on I'm going to be sticking down the controller for the speaker onto that same place. So I'll just keep everything out of the way for a moment. The next thing, oh, I should mention the speaker comes with a couple of plastic tabs on it with holes in it for screwing it down. What I did was I used the side cutters and I just chopped those off. They're not needed in here, and actually it wouldn't fit if I did leave them on. The other thing which I did is on the side of the motor you've got these really handy kind of clips for threading the wires through, which is great. But because of where I want to put the receiver, which is going to be on the side of the motor just there, I've actually chopped it off on this side so that I can stick the receiver here, and this has the added benefit of not only using the space a bit better, but you don't get the orange glow from the receiver, which when it's switched on, the orange LED shining out through the windscreen. Okay. Now it's actually easier to plug everything in before you stick it on, so I will do that first. I know that the wire for the throttle will need to go on the second one in. There's a little T on here, so that's that. S for steering. Now the steering wire actually comes from the electronic speed controller board, and that is the next one in, and it's the blue one, so that will go there. And because I'm wanting to control the sound separately so that I can switch the sound on and off, and also I can, through a mix, make sure that the motor, when the motor isn't running, i.e. it's kind of sat at neutral, after a few seconds the sound unit will actually switch off. So what I've done is I've put something into the mix, and I'll come to the radio later, whereby I prevent that from happening by increasing the sub-trim, if you like, on the engine sound to keep it high enough that when it's just sitting there, it will sit on idle and it won't switch itself off. So what I'm doing is I'm using a separate channel on the auxiliary channel for the sound unit. That does mean that I don't have lights on here. I'd have to have 4 channels if I wanted to do that, but to be quite honest, I'm not that bothered. The Jeep's got lights on it, and the Ford F-150 is going to have lights. This one isn't. And the receiver, with all of these wires, in a few moments is going to be stuck down in there like that. I've got to be quite careful that I don't squash the receiver wire too much, but I think that we should be okay, and I can actually stick it down to the base plate. So next thing to do, quick bit of alcohol on there to make sure we're completely clean. Same on the chassis there. And what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to put some of this tape on and try and make sure that I'm not leaving a whole bunch of sticky tape exposed. And I'll just show you in a moment how I do that. So the first thing that I want to do be a bit difficult. Slice the piece off, and if I just offer this up so that I can see where it goes, I'm going to be wanting to go roughly from the back of the plastic part here where it meets the motor through to the part where the chassis bottom starts to come up on the floor pattern. So that's going to be about that, and then which is about the same length as the receiver itself, and I'm not going to want it to be any deeper than the receiver. So over here. And it's roughly in half. This can be difficult to cut. So I'm going to stick that there. Now what you'll notice is that there's an exposed area of sticky stuff there that will just collect dirt and dust and be particularly horrible. Well, using one of the bits that I peeled off earlier, what I can do is I can cut something roughly to the right shape. That will neatly sit in there and cover most of that up. And then if I peel off the tape, and it can be handy just to use a knife to get the edge up. That will neatly sit there, and that should be okay. The next thing to do is to plug in the controller for the sound unit, and starting with the one from the speaker itself, it goes in the end socket with the 2 pins, with the white facing towards the board, and then the wire which I'm using to control it with, again with the white facing the board, it's the next slot to the one which I just plugged in. That's that. Now, given that space is quite a premium inside here, what I'm actually going to do, and I probably should have done this first, in fact I'll just pull this out for a second. I don't need this wire here, which is the wire that would have been the one going to the speaker controller, and I'll just chop this off. It's not needed. And then I'll put this wire back in again. That's that. You can get them in and out, but it's easier to do everything first. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to neatly put the wire coming from the receiver to the sound unit. I'm going to tuck it down here. I can put quite a few wires down here actually, and stick the board to that exposed bit of tape just behind the speaker. Okay, so that's sitting nicely and the wire isn't going to catch on anything. Right, we're getting there, we're not far off now. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to mount the main speed controller, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that on top of the gearbox here, and you can see how that's going to fit quite neatly. So using one of the leftover bits of tape that I was using a few moments ago, I'll just give that a quick chop, remembering to give a quick squirt of the alcohol just to make sure that we're grease free and clean. That can go there, and then this can come off. Quick squirt on here won't do any harm. Nothing's plugged in, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it on the flattest part in the middle there. Then we have the board nicely held down in place. The motor, just move this out of the way a second. The motor will plug in with the JST plug, get it right around there. So that's the motor all plugged in. And this wire here, which is the one to control the lights, we don't really need that, so rather than chop it off, because I might change my mind one day. In fact, what I'm going to do, I don't need it now. If I do change my mind, I'll resolder the wire, but without going completely short. Just get that a chop. I really don't want any wires in here which aren't being used for anything, any unnecessary wires. I just don't really see the point. And then we have the plug for the steering servo. That can be a bit fiddly to get in, but it's in. And this is with the brown wire nearest the power input. So that's everything pretty well wired up other than the battery. I just want to lay the wires down a bit and get them a bit out of the way. I did have a tyre up which I put in before, and I can kind of tuck things slightly away there, and I think that's a reasonably neat wiring job. And then last of all, I'm going to put the plug for the battery. I'm going to stick it to the side of the speaker because I don't want the wire coming down and fouling on the wheels, and I want to be able to find the plug easily when I'm using it. Get that off, and then have a nice permanent stick there, and that should be pretty well done. We can test everything. That's the speaker coming to life. So steering, it's working okay. Throttle, that's working okay. Great. So first of all, on the switches, what I've done is I've made switch E, which is the button at the side here. I've made that into auxiliary channel 1 trim, which is what I use to raise the revs so that it won't cut out. And I've used button A, which is the first button here, as the one to turn the mix on and off. So that's it for switches. And then in terms of the mix itself, I put it into mix A, and so we have the master being the throttle, we have the slave being auxiliary 1, and you'll see it says B value 0 and 0. So when switch A, which is the one on the side here, is in the downwards position, we aren't going to have any interaction between the master and the slave. However, if you put the button down, you'll see that I've got minus 100% and plus 100%. So what that's doing is it's almost giving me a V-shaped curve, that whether the throttle is put up or down, it's going to increase the revs, and then that way we don't get the cutting out in between. So if I come out of there and I go to the monitor, so we've got the steering, the throttle, the auxiliary channel. You'll see that whichever way I go, the auxiliary throttle is increased, but you didn't hear any sound coming out. Right, after a quick exploration, I discovered that I'd plugged the wire from the speaker to the receiver into the bind plug slot rather than the auxiliary one. So let's give this another go. So in the normal mode, we have the car going forward without any sound. If I then turn the mix on and then I increase the trim for aux 1, which is this button E here, we have sound. And then turn the mix off, reduce the trim, and after a few seconds the motor will stop. Right, well, I hope people have found this video useful. Thank you for watching.